So if you've been on the internet at all lately, you've probably seen the term twin flame floating around. It's kind of everywhere. But what happens when that viral, spiritual idea jumps off the screen and walks right into a therapist's office? Okay, let's get into this because it's a whole lot more complicated than you might think.
Right, so in pop culture, the whole twin flame thing is basically sold as the ultimate fairy tale. It's this idea that you'll find your other half, a person who is the literal mirror to your soul. That's the super romantic version that's gone completely viral. It's framed as the absolute pinnacle of relationships.
And this is where the story takes a sharp turn. Because for a lot of people, this whole experience is no fairy tale. Not at all. It's intense, it can be really destabilizing, and just deeply confusing. So much so that people are now actively seeking professional help just to figure it all out.
Which brings us to the clinical reality of the situation. You've got therapists, coaches, and healers who are suddenly finding themselves sitting across from clients in real distress, trying to explain this experience they've labeled a twin flame journey. And the real challenge? This isn't something they teach you in grad school.
And this slide really shows the huge disconnect. Pop culture is selling this simple, idealized love story. But in a clinical setting, practitioners are dealing with something way, way more complex. We're talking about experiences that feel like a spiritual awakening, where someone's entire view of the world just gets turned upside down, or even a full-blown existential crisis, where they're questioning everything about their life and purpose. They're not just helping someone navigate a breakup, they're helping them navigate their entire sense of self.
So, and this is the crucial part, a lot of practitioners are just not equipped to handle this. I mean, how do you tell the difference between a healthy, even if painful, spiritual transformation and a potential mental health crisis that needs serious help? It's brand new territory, and it demands a whole new set of tools.
So naturally, the professional community has started to respond. We're seeing attempts to fill that exact gap in training and give practitioners the toolkit they so desperately need. And here's a perfect example of that, a professional development course made specifically for therapists, coaches, and healers. Even the name, Decoding Twin Flames, tells you a lot. It signals a major shift away from just romantic fantasy and towards real clinical understanding. This is all about decoding what's actually going on.
Right off the bat, the course makes one thing crystal clear. This is about the deep, spiritual origins of the concept, not the hyped-up romance you see online. It's designed to give real historical and spiritual context, not just relationship tips. And to establish itself as a serious professional resource, it's not some free webinar. It's offered for a standard professional development fee.
And this is a big deal for licensed professionals. It provides continuing education credits,
which are backed by legitimate professional accreditation. It's an approved education provider with NADAC, and the credits are accepted by tons of state boards. All of this is to say, hey, this isn't some fringe workshop. This is a vetted resource inside the established system. Okay, so what's actually in this professional toolkit? What are the practical skills a therapist or a coach is going to walk away with after taking this? Well, the learning objectives are broken down into 3 really practical steps. First, practitioners learn to identify the concept's real spiritual roots so they can separate that from all the pop culture myths. Second, they learn how to assess a client's actual state. Is this a difficult but healthy awakening, or is this an emerging mental health crisis? And finally, they learn to apply strategies that are actually appropriate for their specific role. It's a super clear, action-oriented framework. So, the ultimate goal here is actually pretty powerful. It's all about building what the course calls spiritual literacy, and then weaving that into a professional practice that's still grounded, responsible, and ethically sound. It's about being able to expand your perspective without abandoning solid clinical judgment. The course also does something really important. It distinguishes between professional roles. For example, a coach might focus on supporting that awakening experience using spiritual frameworks to help a client grow. But a licensed therapist, they have the critical and you could say heavier responsibility of figuring out when that experience crosses a line and requires clinical intervention, all within a mental health framework.
Now, if you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, the fact that a course like this even exists tells you something really interesting about where mental health and wellness are headed.
And this is really the key takeaway. The fact that there's a specific, accredited course on twin flames for clinicians, that's a huge signal of a much broader trend. We're seeing a real need and a growing willingness to integrate these kinds of spiritual and existential ideas into mainstream therapy. It's all about cultivating a more sophisticated approach. The course materials themselves put it perfectly. The goal is to frame the experience through both spiritual and existential lenses to meet the needs of a diverse client base. It's not about choosing one or the other, but about using both to meet people where they're really at.
And that leaves us with this fascinating and honestly critical question for the future of mental health. As our understanding of what it means to be human keeps evolving to include these profound spiritual stories, how do we as professionals, and just as a society, get better at drawing that crucial line between a spiritual emergency and a mental health crisis? That's the real challenge that this new terrain presents.